Okay, happy's relative, right? If it's fulfilling, if it's rewarding. Because I also believe in putting yourself in uncomfortable positions.
It wasn't just another night in New York City. 4 of Hollywood's most talked about names casually walked out of a Korean steakhouse in Manhattan like it was no big deal. Brad Pitt, the once elusive, freshly re-emerged heartthrob, holding hands with his new flame, Ines de Ramon, and right behind them, Bradley Cooper and Gigi Hadid, a pair that's been quietly heating up for months. No paparazzi tip-off, no red carpet, just a bold, very public statement. The kind Brad Pitt hasn't made in years. But this wasn't just about dinner. This night told us something else. Brad Pitt is finally done hiding, and the woman on his arm, she might just be the reason why. Because after a decade of public chaos, legal headlines, and whispered rumors, Pitt's sudden reappearance in such A-list company has everyone asking the same question. What exactly is going on with Brad Pitt? And who is Ines de Ramon? For someone now walking beside one of the most recognizable faces on Earth, Ines de Ramon has mastered the art of flying under the radar. No reality shows. No desperate red carpet moments. Just quiet confidence. And a surprisingly private resume. Ines is far from a Hollywood socialite. She's a multilingual jewelry executive with a degree in business, fluent in French, Spanish, Italian, and English. A woman who built her career behind the scenes, not in front of the camera. But somehow, she ended up in Brad Pitt's orbit and stayed there. Before Pitt, Ines was married to the Vampire Diaries actor Paul Wesley. Their relationship, while low profile, lasted several years before quietly ending in early 2022. Not long after, she was spotted with Brad for the first time at a Bono concert in Los Angeles. Was it chance? Was it timing? Or was Brad Pitt finally drawn to someone outside the spotlight? Someone who didn't chase fame, but understood how to navigate it? What makes Ines so compelling isn't just who she's dated, but how she's done it. No interviews, no messy social media hints, and no public drama. She's the kind of woman who could walk past you on the street and still leave you wondering who she is hours later. But as their sightings became more frequent and more deliberate, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a rebound. And soon, Brad was breaking one of his biggest patterns. Brad Pitt's romantic history reads like a who's who of Hollywood's elite. The Fairy Tale with Jennifer Aniston, The Wildfire with Angelina Jolie, The Whirlwind with Gwyneth Paltrow. Each one played out in front of flashing cameras, splashed across headlines, dissected by the world in real time. But this feels different. There were no tabloid leaks, no sudden red carpet debuts, no cryptic quotes from close friends just trying to help. With Ines, everything has been slow, quiet, intentional, and above all, real. It's a sharp contrast to the way Brad has lived publicly for decades. Where past romances unraveled in front of cameras or exploded in divorce court, this one seems to be unfolding on his terms. He's no longer the young actor chasing the next thrill or making headlines for all the wrong reasons. Now, at 61, he appears calm, measured, maybe even content. And standing beside him, a woman who doesn't need the spotlight to validate her worth. Even their body language says more than 1,000 gossip columns ever could. There's ease, familiarity, the kind of connection that doesn't beg for attention, because it already has it. But just when fans began to wonder if this would stay under wraps forever, Brad did something he hasn't done in nearly a decade. He stepped into the spotlight and didn't look back. When Brad Pitt and Ines de Ramon were first spotted together in 2022, it didn't cause a media frenzy. And that was the strange part. No urgent exclusives, no mystery woman headlines, just a grainy photo from a Bono concert in LA, showing the two laughing quietly off to the side. And for months after, silence. But that silence didn't mean things weren't moving behind the scenes. In 2023, they reappeared, this time at the British Grand Prix. Sunglasses, subtle smiles, and just enough PDA to spark whispers. It wasn't flashy, but it was deliberate. And that's when the internet started to take notice. Rumors flared. Was it real? Or was Brad using the moment to promote his upcoming F1 racing movie? The theory picked up steam until Pitt himself shut it down. In a rare interview, he brushed off the suggestion with a smirk. No, dude, it's not that calculated. He didn't need a viral date to market a film, and you could hear the exhaustion in his voice. If you're living with making those kinds of calculations, he said, how exhausting would that be? And then, just a few months later, came the moment no one expected. The Venice Film Festival. There they were, Brad and Ines, walking a red carpet. Together. No disguises, no hiding, no cryptic "we're just friends" narrative. It was their quiet, hard launch to the world, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Because the media circus wasn't chasing them anymore. They were leading it. But behind that public confidence was a much heavier story, one Brad had been carrying for years. Before Ines, before the quiet dinners and red carpet returns, there was Angelina. Brad Pitt's relationship with Angelina Jolie wasn't just a love story, it was a global spectacle. Brangelina dominated headlines for over a decade. From their first sparks on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith to their opulent wedding at a French chateau, surrounded by their 6 children. For a while, it looked like the Hollywood fairy tale had found its happy ending. But when it unraveled, it did so spectacularly. The divorce, filed by Jolie in 2016, would drag on for nearly 8 years. Filled with legal disputes, custody battles, and FBI investigations that painted a far more complicated picture behind the scenes. While no charges were ever filed, the whispers never stopped. And Brad? He largely went silent. It wasn't until December 2024 that the dust finally settled. After almost a decade of legal warfare, Brad Pitt was, on paper, free again. But freedom doesn't always mean peace. And stepping back into the dating world after that kind of public breakdown isn't as simple as showing up with someone new. That's why Ines stood out. There was no drama, no echoes of past patterns. She wasn't part of Hollywood's inner gossip circuit. She came with her own life, her own calm, her own distance from the wreckage of Brad's past. And maybe that's what he needed most. Because to step out of Angelina's shadow meant more than finalizing a divorce. It meant reclaiming something quieter and more difficult: trust. And when Brad took Ines's hand in public, he wasn't just introducing a new girlfriend. He was closing the chapter on one of Hollywood's most chaotic love stories, and finally opening the door to something else. But he wasn't opening it alone. Brad Pitt has always been surrounded by stars, but rarely has he stepped out with them. That's what made June 13th so striking. It wasn't just about romance. It was a signal. When Brad and Ines walked out of that Manhattan steakhouse with Bradley Cooper and Gigi Hadid in tow, it wasn't a random coincidence. It was the kind of social alignment that happens when something is shifting behind the scenes. Bradley and Brad have been friends for years, both fiercely private, both seasoned by fame, both trying to navigate life after some very public personal struggles. But until now, their connection stayed behind closed doors. No flashy dinners, no double-date snapshots. So why now? Some say it's because Gigi and Ines clicked. Others think it's something more strategic. A new inner circle quietly forming, a modern brat pack, where privacy is currency and trust is earned, not assumed. What's certain is this: the foursome didn't just grab dinner, they made a statement. Gigi Hadid, known for keeping her dating life tightly controlled after her high-profile relationship with Zayn Malik, just recently made things Instagram official with Bradley. Her caption, celebrating her 30th birthday, hinted at deep gratitude, growth, and a grounded kind of love. And Ines? She fit in like she'd been part of the picture all along. In a world where everyone's watching, these four chose to be seen. Not for scandal, but for something almost more rebellious in today's fame economy. Stability. But Brad Pitt's history tells us appearances don't always match reality. And if anyone knows how quickly things can change in Hollywood, it's him. There was a time when Brad Pitt couldn't breathe without making headlines. Every step, every smile, every silence, it was all up for interpretation. And for years, the chaos wasn't just tabloid noise. It was real. Divorces, custody battles, rehab rumors of fights on private jets, and the pressure of being Brad Pitt, the face, the body, the myth, even as the man beneath all that tried to keep from disappearing. But lately, something's changed. You can see it in the way he walks now. Not with swagger, but with ease. There's no performance, no edge, just quiet confidence. Like a man who's finally stopped trying to outrun his past. And a big part of that calm seems to be Ines. She's not trying to fix him. She's not trying to play to the cameras. She's just there. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Brad has spoken more recently about evolution, not just in career, but in mindset. About letting life unfold instead of controlling every outcome. That's not the voice of someone clinging to youth or fame. It's someone who's tired of the noise and finally learning to live in the quiet. There are still questions, of course. There always will be when you're Brad Pitt. But these days, he doesn't seem to care about answering them. Because when the storm finally passes, the silence can feel strange, but it can also feel like peace. And for the first time in a long time, Brad Pitt looks like a man at peace. In a city where love is often a performance and endings are written before the first act even finishes, Brad Pitt's latest chapter feels different. Not scripted, not curated, just quiet, consistent presence. And that's why the world is watching more closely than ever. Brad has had plenty of it girls by his side. The kind of relationships that explode onto magazine covers and then vanish just as quickly. But Ines de Ramon isn't following the usual script. No PR statements, no orchestrated leaks, no sudden fragrance campaigns. Just a woman walking beside one of the most famous men alive, with zero interest in becoming a headline herself. And that's exactly why she's become one. But even now, 2 years in, they've kept things surprisingly low-key. No engagement rings, no baby rumors, no secret elopements. Just two people quietly navigating a relationship under the sharpest spotlight in the world. And maybe that's the point. They don't need to announce anything. The fact that they're still together is the announcement. Still, the speculation is starting to build. Some insiders whisper that Ines has already moved into Brad's compound part-time, that she's slowly woven herself into his inner world, from intimate dinners with close friends, to long weekends in the south of France, to cozy nights tucked away from the city. She's reportedly met his trusted inner circle, and he's met hers. There are rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, that they're talking long-term. Not flashy talk, not ring shopping at Cartier, just real conversations, future plans, shared goals, the quiet logistics of a life being built behind closed doors. And here's the thing, Brad has changed. In his 30s and 40s, he was a leading man. In his 50s, a tabloid magnate. But now, in his 60s, he's becoming something we haven't seen from him before. Grounded. He's choosing smaller films with bigger meanings. He's producing behind the scenes. He's showing up less, but when he does, like that June 13th double date, it matters. Every move feels deliberate now, not reactive. And with Ines by his side, he's not chasing attention. He's choosing when to be seen. For a man whose every move was once under a microscope, that's not just evolution. That's power. And maybe, just maybe, it's peace. Will this lead to marriage? Maybe, maybe not. But it feels like Brad has already made the bigger commitment, stepping off the roller coaster and choosing a quieter path. One that isn't built on spectacle, but on something far more rare in Hollywood. Intention. So where is this going? Maybe it's not about the destination anymore. Maybe for Brad Pitt, it's finally about the journey. And this time, he's not walking it alone. Brad Pitt didn't just survive Hollywood, he defined it. For years, he wasn't just on screen, he was the screen. The golden-haired rebel, the thinking woman sex symbol, the guy every director wanted and every tabloid chased. He became an icon not because he tried to, but because he couldn't escape it. And for a while, it worked. The fame, the roles, the red carpets. He was the embodiment of American stardom, charming, untouchable, and endlessly watchable. But behind the scenes, the real story was unraveling. Quiet addictions, failed marriages, family breakdowns, and a private man losing control of a very public life. And yet, here he is. Not with a bang, but with a steady hand, walking through Manhattan holding someone else's. It's easy to forget that Brad Pitt is 61 now, that he's not chasing action roles or blockbuster franchises, that he's traded in the glossy magazine covers for slower mornings, smaller films, and less noise. What we're witnessing isn't the fall of a star, it's the evolution of one. And in a way, that's more captivating than anything he's done on screen. Because Brad Pitt didn't just vanish after the chaos. He reemerged, wiser, quieter, but still magnetic. He's showing the world what it looks like to rebuild in plain sight, to let go of the spectacle, to stop trying to be what everyone wants, and start living for what you need. Ines de Ramon may not be a household name, but maybe that's the point. She's not there to complete a celebrity fairy tale. She's there because she isn't part of the fairy tale at all. She represents a different kind of relationship, not built on public perception, but on private peace. And that's what makes this moment so fascinating. Because Brad's not showing off, he's showing up. Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, but for himself. This isn't the Brad Pitt we met in Thelma and Louise or cheered for in Ocean's 11. This isn't the man caught between Jennifer and Angelina, or the star giving teary-eyed interviews after the latest breakup. This is someone entirely new. Someone who's learned that silence can be powerful. That vulnerability doesn't always need an audience, and that the most meaningful roles aren't acted, they're lived. For decades, the world watched Brad Pitt chase love, lose it, break down, rebuild, and fall again. But now it seems he's no longer running. He's walking forward, steady, with someone beside him, not behind him. And if this is the new chapter for Hollywood's most watched man, then maybe, just maybe, it's one without a plot twist. No shocking revelations, no scandals, just a man who's been through enough to know what matters and is finally choosing it. Quietly, deliberately, on his own terms. Brad Pitt didn't plan to become the face of a generation. It just happened. He was thrust into the spotlight, turned into an icon, and then burned under the same light that built him. For years, we watched his life like it was a series. Each relationship, each scandal, each quiet disappearance, a new episode. But maybe, for the first time, we're not watching a performance. Maybe we're witnessing a man simply living. Ines de Ramon isn't part of the script we expected. She's not famous, not loud, not interested in playing the Hollywood game. And maybe that's exactly why she's still here. Still by Brad's side, even when the cameras fade and the flashbulbs stop popping. Because this isn't about reinvention. It's about return. A return to self. A return to peace. A return to something slower, quieter, and real. And in a city, an industry where people are constantly trying to stay relevant, maybe Brad Pitt is doing something far more radical. He's choosing not to be watched and still being seen. So, is this the beginning of Brad Pitt's final act? Or the start of something none of us expected? Only time will tell. But if one thing's certain, it's this. The story of Brad Pitt isn't over. It's just finally being told the way he wants it to be.